Welcome to Reparenting Radio. I'm Lisa Watson, architect of human transformation. This is a space for leaders, parents, and anyone ready to break old patterns, regulate their nervous system, and show up in their life with clarity and self-trust. If you're ready to change the way you lead, love, and live, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Hey friends, welcome back to Reparenting Radio. I want to start today's episode with a question. What if your life is not random? What if the things that keep showing up for you aren't simply coincidences? What if your relationships, your emotional patterns, your emotional reactions, your challenges, your physical symptoms, your triggers, your frustration, all of it. What if even the circumstances that you're navigating are simply all carrying information? And not because life is punishing you in some way or even rewarding you, but because life is constantly communicating with you. A few days ago, I was out for a run. And I was jogging up this hill, feeling pretty good, enjoying the morning. I had just picked a bunch of flowers on my way, and suddenly I tripped and fell and found myself on my hands, which is very rare for me because I really am like a cat. I almost never fall. I have really great balance. It wasn't dramatic. I wasn't bleeding or anything, and nobody had to come rescue me. But I landed hard on the palms of my hands. And at first, I only noticed my right hand was hurting. Then later that night, I realized that my calf was hurting too. And now my hip is hurting. Quite a bit, actually. And honestly, I think that I just simply knocked myself out of alignment physically. But one thing about myself is that whenever something happens, an injury, an illness, a symptom, just a challenge in life, maybe a conflict or even an unexpected detour, I naturally become curious, not fearful, but curious. And I find myself asking, what is this experience inviting me to pay attention to? What might I not be seeing? And what can I learn from this? And most importantly, how is this happening for me? This isn't something that I started doing because I fell. It's actually something I've been doing for many, many years. And I've always been fascinated by patterns. The patterns in people, the patterns in relationships, the patterns in families, the patterns that repeat generation to generation, and the ones that show up in our bodies. The patterns that seem to follow us until we're finally willing to look at them. And I think this is one of the reasons that I love the work that I do so much, because it's not about helping people fix themselves. It's really about helping them see and recognize the patterns that have been operating unconsciously and helping them become aware of things that have been quietly influencing their lives for years. Because awareness changes everything. And I swear, every podcast I do, every newsletter I write is about awareness at the end of the day. Because awareness changes everything. And when we can see something, then we can work with it. When we can't see it, we're usually being run by it. And what I've come to understand is that most people have been taught to look at life backwards. We've been taught that reality is something happening to us, something outside of us, something separate from who we are, as if we're simply passengers riding through life while random events occur around us. But that is not entirely true. And this is where I want to introduce a concept that I talk about often in my work. It's the idea of your field. Your field is the reality that you experience. It's your life. It's your relationships, your opportunities, it's your challenges, it's everything. It's your health, your emotions, your patterns, your circumstances, all of your experiences. That is what your field is. Everything you witness and experience as your reality. And here's where it gets really interesting, because what I've learned through my study and my work is that the field isn't random. The reality that we experience is being filtered through and influenced by our subconscious programming, by our beliefs. I've said that. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. My mother used to say that all the time. Your beliefs create your reality. And your field is influenced by your conditioning, by your nervous system, by your memories, your expectations, your attention, your perception. All of it working together to shape how you experience life and what you consistently create, attract, notice, or participate in. In other words, your field is not separate from you. You are in direct relationship with it constantly. You are one with your field. The observer and the experience are interacting all the time, which means when I look at someone's life, I'm often less interested in the individual event, and I'm more interested in finding the pattern, because patterns tell a story. Patterns reveal beliefs and conditioning. Patterns reveal what the nervous system has learned to expect, and patterns reveal where awareness is being invited. So let me give you an example. Two people can walk into the exact same situation and have completely different experiences, right? I mean, we've experienced that reality. One person walks into a room and immediately feels rejected, and another person walks into the same room but feels welcomed. One person sees opportunity, another sees danger. One person hears feedback, another hears criticism. One person may experience challenge and another is experiencing failure. Same circumstance, different field. And what fascinates me is that science has actually been pointing towards this in various ways for decades. Neuroscience tells us that our brains are constantly filtering information. At any given moment, there are millions of pieces of information available around you. Your conscious mind is only aware of a tiny fraction of them because your brain filters reality. It decides what is important. It highlights certain information and it ignores other information. In other words, you're not experiencing all of reality. You're experiencing the version of reality your brain believes is relevant. Because the conscious mind can only process about 25 bits of information per second. The subconscious mind is processing something like 40 million bits of information per second. And then there's your nervous system. Your nervous system is constantly scanning your environment for safety and danger. It doesn't just look at what's true, it looks for what's familiar. And think about that for a moment. Not what's true, but what's familiar. This is why people can leave unhealthy relationships and end up in another unhealthy relationship. It's why someone can achieve success and still feel unsafe. And why people receive love, but they struggle to trust it. The nervous system isn't always choosing what's best or seeing the whole picture. It's often choosing just what's familiar. And once you begin understanding that, so much of human behavior starts to make sense. Because this is where things become really interesting. For hundreds of years, science viewed reality as a giant machine. Independent parts, independent people, independent events. A universe made up of separate objects interacting mechanically with one another. Then quantum physics came along and started challenging many of those assumptions. And that's what I've been fascinated with for the last few years. At the smallest level we can measure, reality behaves very differently than what we once believed or were told. Particles behave like waves. Observation appears to influence measurable outcomes. Entangled particles remain connected in ways that continue to fascinate physicists today. And the deeper scientists look, the less separate reality appears, the less solid, the less mechanical, the less predictable. We're all energy, we're all connected, we're all one. And while we're still learning and discovering, one thing has become increasingly clear. Reality is far more interconnected than we once thought. And, that doesn't surprise me at all, because when I look at people, when I look at healing and relationships and family systems and trauma, when I look at consciousness, interconnection is everywhere. Nothing exists in isolation. And once you begin seeing life through that lens, something starts to shift. You stop asking, why does this keep happening to me? And you start asking, what is this showing me? And that one question can change everything. Because most people spend years trying to change their circumstances without ever becoming aware of the patterns that are creating them. They change partners, jobs, cities, routines, goals even. But they bring the same nervous system with them, the same subconscious programming, the same emotional patterns, the same beliefs, the same expectations. And then they're confused when the scenery changes, but the experience feels familiar. I see this all the time. Someone says, I keep attracting emotionally unavailable people, or I keep ending up in workplaces where I don't feel valued, or I just keep struggling with money. I keep finding myself overwhelmed and exhausted and burnt out. And often what they're describing isn't a single event. They're describing a pattern. And patterns are where awareness becomes really powerful, because patterns will reveal your field to you. They reveal what has become familiar. They reveal what the nervous system has adapted to. They reveal what the subconscious mind expects. The field reveals this. And this is why I think so many conversations about manifestation are incomplete. Because manifestation is often taught as if conscious thought is the only thing that matters. Just think positively, visualize what you want, raise your vibration, just believe harder, act as if. And while intention absolutely matters, what we miss is a huge piece of the equation, because we ignore the nervous system. For example, someone can consciously want love while unconsciously expecting rejection. And someone can consciously want abundance while subconsciously associating visibility with danger. Someone can consciously want peace while their nervous system has spent decades adapting to chaos. So consciously, you may be reaching for one reality, but unconsciously, you're broadcasting a completely different signal. And that is the understanding that actually led me to all my work 10 years ago, when I realized that, oh dang, I need to know what the subconscious programs are that are creating my reality, not the surface level stuff. And here I am 10 years later on this deep dive. It's not that we're doing anything wrong, because our body's simply operating from familiarity. And this is where compassion becomes so important. Because once you understand how the nervous system works, you stop making your patterns mean that something is wrong with you or that you need to be fixed. You start realizing, oh, well, of course I struggle with trust. Of course I people please. Oh my goodness, now I see why I overwork and stay hypervigilant. Wow, of course I keep repeating this pattern. My nervous system learned something. My subconscious learned something. My body adapted. And adaptation is natural. It's not failure. It's actual intelligence. The problem is that what helped us survive at one point in our lives, our childhood mainly, often becomes the thing limiting us later, which I talk about all the time, emotional regression. And that we had to adapt to be safe in our childhood, but we don't necessarily let go of those subconscious patterns and behaviors when we become an autonomous, sovereign adult. I think one of the loudest communicators that we have to our field is our body. Not because every symptom we have necessarily carries, spiritual or mystical meaning of some sort, but because the body is constantly responding and it remembers everything. The nervous system remembers. The body keeps score. It adapts to fear and stress. It adapts to emotional suppression and chronic vigilance. It adapts to disconnection. And many people have spent years overriding those signals, ignoring exhaustion and resentment and grief, ignoring their own needs and their own boundaries until eventually their body gets louder. And again, not because it's punishing us or because we've done anything wrong, but because it's trying to get our attention. It's showing us the state of our nervous system. It's showing us the programs and the conditioning that we are running on. It shows us our programs. So let's go back to my fall for just a minute here, because if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know I love to give real life examples from my own life. And one of the books that I have used for years is by Louise Hay, who explores emotional and psychological symbolism that can sometimes accompany physical symptoms and injuries. I've also read work from Ines Siegel and some other authors that look at the body as a messenger rather than simply as a machine. Now, whether you agree with every interpretation isn't really the point. The point is curiosity. The point is asking better questions. So after I fell, I started looking at the areas that I was injured. It was my right thumb, the palm of my hand, my right hip. And I started asking myself, what might these be reflecting in my life right now? Aches in these places. Not because I believe that injury magically appeared because of a thought or a circumstance, but because I believe awareness can reveal things that we might otherwise miss. And I believe that I'm one with my field. So when something like that happens, to me, it's not something that happened to me outside of me. It's something that I participated with in my field, and it's there to guide me. And what I learned is that the thumb is often associated with willpower, control, action, and our ability to grasp life. The hands are connected to giving, receiving, holding on, and letting go. And the right side of the body is associated with the masculine side, action, moving forward, career, work, our relationship with external achievement. And the hip's about movement and support, stepping into the future, moving forward in life. And when I sat with all of that, I had to laugh a little because if I'm being honest, which I usually am, it mirrors exactly what's happening in my life right now. My husband's still in Mexico. I'm here in California. We're building a future that hasn't fully arrived yet. I'm launching a new version of my work. I'm stepping into bigger leadership, building a consulting business, growing my podcast. I'm working to finish my Reparent Yourself to Find Healing in All Relationships book, as well as 2 other children's books. There's a lot going on. And I'm taking action in ways that I've never taken before. And I'm feeling an instability that I haven't felt for a long time. So there's a lot of forward movement happening, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of trust that's being required of me. And based on this information from my fall and the parts of the body that it affected, I started to wonder, am I trying to grip too tightly? Am I trying to carry too much myself? Am I forcing forward movement instead of just allowing it? Or am I fully trusting where life is taking me? I know that my hip hurts and my hands hurt because I fell. But I also know those questions revealed things worth paying attention to. And that's the point. The injury didn't matter nearly as much as the awareness that it created. And so that's what I focus on. Not the injury, but the awareness that it created. And I'm grateful for the fall, and I'm grateful for the information, even though I'm uncomfortable. And that's what awareness really is. Awareness is learning to listen and be curious, not from fear or from obsession or, you're not trying to analyze every little thing, but you start listening. You start listening to your body and your emotions and your relationships and your reactions, your patterns. You start listening to your life as a partner, a co-creating partner, not an enemy that's doing stuff to you. Because life is constantly providing feedback, which is one of the reasons that I created the Reveal method. Because at its core, the Reveal method is about helping people learn how to read their own field, to become aware of what they're experiencing, to notice what keeps repeating, to identify the patterns operating beneath the surface, and to understand how the nervous system is influencing perception, to recognize the subconscious beliefs that are shaping our behavior, and ultimately to create new experiences from awareness instead of from unconscious programming. Once you can see the pattern, you open up new choices for yourself. Before awareness, there's no choice. There's just reaction, conditioning, autopilot. It's just my personality. It just happened. It had nothing to do with me. Awareness creates space. And inside that space is possibility. Inside that space is freedom. Freedom to make a new choice. And I believe that's what healing really is. It's not about becoming someone else or fixing yourself. It's not about achieving some sort of perfection. Healing is simply becoming conscious enough to stop living completely unconsciously. It's becoming aware of the programs that you've been running, the stories you've been telling yourself and believing, the emotional patterns that you've been carrying, and the nervous system responses that you've mistaken for your personality. You are not broken. You're patterned, and patterns can be changed. Not overnight, and not through shame, not through force, but through awareness and repetition and compassion, through practice, through trying new things and new experiences and making new choices, through nervous system regulation and conscious choice. And truly, I believe that that is what awakening is. Awakening is finally becoming conscious inside your own field. It's like waking up in the dream, and you remember that you're the dreamer. It's seeing what was previously unseen. It's recognizing the patterns and the programs and understanding that your field is yours to play with and communicate with. It's realizing that life has been speaking to you all along through your relationships, through your body, your emotions, your challenges, your victories, your setbacks. The field speaks. The question is, are you listening? Are you paying attention? So this week, I want to leave you with one simple invitation. Pay attention. Notice what keeps repeating. Notice what drains you. What energizes you? Notice your injuries and your illnesses and your aches and pains. Notice where they are on your body. Notice your emotional reactions. Notice your triggers. Notice your patterns. Not from judgment, not from blame, from curiosity. Because awareness is where everything begins. Your reality is communicating with you far more than you realize. And maybe the next step in your healing isn't fixing anything at all. Maybe it's simply learning how to listen. So if you're wanting some reminders on how to consistently practice awareness and reprogramming yourself and seeing your patterns, I've put together a few free resources for you. There's a quick start guide to reparenting yourself, a guide to conscious parenting, and a guide for leaders on the personal patterns to look at before they start to scale. The links to download all of these are directly in the show notes. They're all free, just PDFs. I appreciate you. I love you. Thank you for listening and being here with me this week. And until next time, be gentle with yourself. Stay curious and keep paying attention. Thank you for listening to Reparenting Radio. If today's conversation supported you, take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who knows they were made for more than the patterns that they inherited. If you're ready for serious inner work and real transformation, personally or professionally, you can explore my leadership pathways at lisa-watson.com. And if you're raising little ones alongside your own healing, you'll find my children's books at awakentheone.org. Until next time, stay grounded, stay open, and keep reparenting the parts of you that are ready to come home to their authenticity.